The sun rises over Ouagadougou, casting long shadows across makeshift settlements that stretch beyond the eye can see. These are not the picturesque neighborhoods shown in tourism brochures, but the harsh reality of urban life that millions of Burkinabe face daily. In these sprawling areas, families crowd into single rooms made of corrugated metal sheets, where the temperature can reach unbearable heights during the dry season. Fatima Ouedraogo wakes up at 4 a.m. every morning, not by choice, but by necessity. The 34-year-old mother of 4 lives in one of Ouagadougou's most challenging neighborhoods, where running water is a luxury and electricity comes sporadically. Her day begins with a 2-kilometer walk to the nearest well, carrying plastic containers that will provide her family's water needs for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. The well water, while available, often carries a brownish tint that speaks of contamination issues plaguing many urban areas. The neighborhood where Fatima lives represents thousands of similar settlements across Burkina Faso's major cities. Here, narrow dirt paths wind between densely packed structures that house multiple families. During the rainy season, these paths turn into muddy streams, making movement nearly impossible. Children splash through puddles mixed with sewage, their laughter masking the serious health risks they face daily. The lack of proper drainage systems means that wastewater has nowhere to go, creating breeding grounds for disease-carrying mosquitoes and other pests. Inside Fatima's home, space is at a premium. The single room serves as bedroom, kitchen, and living area for 6 people. Cooking happens on a small charcoal stove that fills the confined space with smoke, contributing to respiratory problems that affect most residents. The walls, made from a combination of mud bricks and metal sheets, provide little insulation from the extreme weather conditions that characterize the Sahel region. Education for children in these areas faces enormous challenges. The nearest school is overcrowded, with one teacher managing over 80 students in a classroom designed for 30. Many children, especially girls, drop out early to help their families with daily survival tasks. Fatima's eldest daughter, 14-year-old Aminata, spends her mornings helping with household chores and her afternoons selling small items on the street to contribute to the family income. Healthcare access remains another critical issue. The community health center serves tens of thousands of residents but lacks basic medical supplies and qualified staff. Fatima remembers when her youngest son fell seriously ill with malaria. The clinic had no medicine available, and the nearest hospital required transportation costs the family could not afford. They relied on traditional remedies and prayers, hoping for the best outcome. The economic situation in these urban areas creates a cycle that is difficult to break. Most residents work in the informal sector, selling goods on the street, doing manual labor, or providing small services. Income is unpredictable, and families often go days without knowing where their next meal will come from. Banks and financial institutions are absent from these neighborhoods, making it impossible for residents to access credit or save money securely. Security concerns add another layer of difficulty to daily life. Street lighting is non-existent, making nighttime dangerous for residents, especially women and children. Crime rates have increased as economic desperation grows, and police presence is minimal. Community members have formed informal security groups, but their effectiveness is limited without proper resources or training. The waste management situation reflects the broader infrastructure challenges. Garbage collection services do not reach these areas, forcing residents to burn trash or dump it in empty lots. The smell of burning plastic and organic waste fills the air constantly, creating additional health hazards. During the rainy season, uncollected garbage blocks already inadequate drainage systems, leading to flooding that can last for days. Transportation within and out of these areas relies heavily on motorcycles and bicycles, as roads are too poor for regular vehicles. The few public buses that attempt to serve these routes often break down due to road conditions. This isolation makes it difficult for residents to access better job opportunities in other parts of the city or to reach essential services like hospitals and government offices. Despite these overwhelming challenges, communities like Fatima's demonstrate remarkable resilience and solidarity. Neighbors share resources when possible, and community organizations work to address immediate needs. Women's groups pool money to help members during emergencies, and youth organizations try to keep children engaged in positive activities. However, these grassroots efforts, while admirable, cannot address the systematic issues that create and perpetuate these urban difficulties. The situation in these neighborhoods has worsened in recent years due to various factors including climate change, economic instability, and political transitions. Rural populations continue to migrate to cities seeking opportunities, but urban infrastructure has not expanded to accommodate this growth. The result is increasing pressure on already strained resources and services. As Ibrahim Traore's government faces the enormous task of addressing these urban challenges, the daily struggles of families like Fatima's continue. Each morning brings the same difficulties: finding water, securing food, protecting children's health, and maintaining hope for a better future. The reality of urban life in these areas of Burkina Faso reveals the urgent need for comprehensive solutions that address infrastructure, economic opportunities, healthcare, education, and basic human dignity. The story of these urban settlements is not just about physical hardships, but about human dreams deferred and potential unrealized. Every family living in these conditions represents hopes for better education for their children, stable employment, and access to basic services that many people around the world take for granted. The scorching afternoon heat beats down mercilessly on the metal rooftops of Bobo Diolaso's poorest quarter, where temperatures inside homes can reach 50 degrees Celsius. Musa Konate, a 28-year-old father of 3, sits in the shade of a baobab tree, one of the few natural shelters in this concrete and metal jungle. He repairs shoes for a living, a trade he learned from his father, but customers are becoming scarce as economic hardships affect everyone in the community. The lack of proper urban planning has created a maze of narrow alleys where emergency vehicles cannot pass. When fires break out, which happens frequently due to unsafe electrical connections and cooking methods, entire sections of the neighborhood can be consumed before help arrives. Last month, Musa watched helplessly as flames destroyed 12 homes in his area. The fire started from a faulty electrical wire in an overloaded connection that served 20 families. With no fire station nearby and inadequate water pressure in the few available hydrants, residents could only save what they could carry and pray the wind would not spread the flames further. The electrical situation in these areas represents a daily gamble with safety. Illegal connections tap into main power lines, creating dangerous tangles of wires that hang precariously over walkways. Power outages are frequent, and when electricity does flow, the voltage fluctuations can destroy the few appliances families manage to own. Musa's neighbor lost his small refrigerator, which he had been paying for in installments for 2 years, when a power surge fried its motor. The loss meant not only the money invested, but also the end of his small business selling cold drinks. Water scarcity reaches crisis levels during the dry season. The few functioning wells serve thousands of people, creating long queues that can last hours. Women and children, who typically bear the responsibility of water collection, must wake up before dawn to secure their place in line. The water quality varies dramatically, with some wells producing water that causes stomach problems and skin irritations. Boiling water for purification requires fuel that many families cannot afford regularly, forcing difficult choices between safe drinking water and other basic needs. Sanitation facilities are virtually non-existent in these crowded areas. Publics toilets, where they exist, are overwhelmed and poorly maintained. Most families rely on shared facilities that serve dozens of households, creating unsanitary conditions and privacy concerns, especially for women and girls. During the rainy season, poor drainage causes sewage to overflow into living areas, creating health hazards and making daily life even more challenging. The informal economy dominates these neighborhoods, with residents creating ingenious ways to earn income despite the lack of formal opportunities. Small-scale vendors sell everything from phone credit to homemade meals, often working with tiny profit margins that barely cover basic needs. Musa's wife, Aicha, sells peanuts and small snacks she prepares at home, but competition is fierce, and many days she returns with unsold goods, representing lost ingredients and wasted effort. Children in these areas face particular challenges that extend beyond poverty. Schools are overcrowded and under-resourced, with many lacking basic facilities, like clean toilets and drinking water. Teachers, often underpaid and overwhelmed, struggle to provide quality education in classes where students may not have eaten breakfast or may need to leave early to help with family income. The cycle of poverty continues as education, the primary path to better opportunities, becomes increasingly difficult to access and complete. Healthcare challenges multiply in these dense urban settings. Communicable diseases spread rapidly in overcrowded conditions with poor sanitation. The community health center serves a population far exceeding its capacity, with one doctor for thousands of residents. Preventive care is limited and chronic. Conditions often go untreated until they become life-threatening emergencies. Traditional medicine remains popular not only due to cultural preferences, but also because it is more accessible and affordable than modern medical care. The psychological toll of living in these conditions affects entire families. Stress levels remain constantly high as parents worry about their children's safety, health, and future prospects. Mental health services are non-existent, and community support systems, while strong, can become overwhelmed by the collective challenges everyone faces. Young people in particular struggle with feelings of hopelessness as they see limited pathways to improving their circumstances. Environmental degradation compounds the daily difficulties. Air pollution from burning waste, cooking fires, and dust from unpaved roads creates respiratory problems for many residents. The lack of green spaces means children have few safe places to play, and adults have limited areas for recreation or relaxation. The urban heat island effect is intensified by the prevalence of metal roofing and lack of vegetation, making the already hot climate even more unbearable. Transportation remains a significant barrier to accessing opportunities outside these neighborhoods. Public transportation is limited and unreliable, making it difficult for residents to seek employment in other parts of the city. The cost of transportation can represent a significant portion of a family's daily income, forcing many to limit their movements to essential trips only. This isolation perpetuates economic exclusion and limits access to better services available in other urban areas. Despite these overwhelming challenges, communities demonstrate remarkable innovation and resilience. Neighborhood associations organize collective action to address immediate problems, such as cleaning drainage ditches or organizing security patrols. Women's cooperatives provide mutual support for income-generating activities and emergency assistance. Youth groups work to keep children engaged in positive activities and away from potential negative influences. The rapid urban growth that has created these challenging conditions continues unabated. Rural families, facing their own difficulties including climate change impacts and insecurity, continue to migrate to cities seeking better opportunities. However, urban infrastructure and services have not expanded to accommodate this population growth, leading to increasing pressure on already inadequate resources and facilities. The rainy season transforms these urban settlements into treacherous landscapes where survival becomes even more challenging. Salimata Sawadogo stands knee-deep in muddy water that has invaded her home for the third time this month. The 45-year-old widow watches helplessly as her few possessions float in the contaminated water that carries sewage, garbage, and unknown dangers from across the neighborhood. Her mud brick walls, weakened by repeated flooding, show new cracks that threaten the structural integrity of her modest dwelling. The drainage systems, inadequate even during dry periods, become completely overwhelmed when the rains arrive. Streets turn into rivers carrying everything in their path, including human waste from overflowing latrines and toxic runoff from makeshift garbage dumps. Children who once played in these same streets now face serious health risks from waterborne diseases. The stagnant pools that remain after floods become breeding grounds for mosquitoes, dramatically increasing malaria cases in communities already struggling with limited healthcare access. In the Tanghin neighborhood of Ouagadougou, families have developed a grim routine during flood season. They move their most precious possessions to higher ground, often the corrugated metal roofs of their homes, and wait for the waters to recede. Cooking becomes nearly impossible as wood and charcoal become soaked and unusable. Many families go days eating only bread or biscuits when available, as preparing traditional meals requires dry fuel and clean cooking surfaces. The economic impact of flooding extends far beyond immediate property damage. Street vendors lose their merchandise to flood waters, wiping out investments that represented weeks or months of careful saving. Salimata's small business selling vegetables at the local market disappeared overnight when floods destroyed her stock and damaged her makeshift stall. Without insurance or savings to fall back on, such losses often push families deeper into poverty, creating cycles that can take years to overcome. Transportation becomes nearly impossible during heavy rains. The few roads serving these areas, already in poor condition, become impassable mud pits. Emergency vehicles cannot reach sick or injured residents, and women in labor must sometimes walk long distances through dangerous conditions to reach medical facilities. The isolation during flood periods can be life-threatening for those with chronic conditions requiring regular medical attention. School closures during the rainy season further interrupt children's education. Many school buildings in these areas lack proper foundations and drainage, making them unsafe during floods. When schools do remain open, children often cannot attend due to impassable roads or because they are needed at home to help with flood-related emergencies. Teachers, many of whom live in similar conditions, also struggle to reach their schools consistently. The water supply, already problematic during normal times, becomes a serious crisis during floods. Wells become contaminated with floodwater, carrying sewage and chemicals. Water treatment becomes essential but remains expensive and difficult to achieve consistently. Families must choose between drinking potentially contaminated water or going without, both options carrying serious health consequences. Housing conditions deteriorate rapidly during the rainy season. Roofs made from corrugated metal sheets often leak, and the makeshift repairs families can afford rarely withstand heavy downpours. Interior walls become damp and moldy, creating respiratory problems and damaging the few belongings families possess. The constant dampness also accelerates the deterioration of electrical connections, increasing fire risks in areas where emergency response is already inadequate. Healthcare challenges multiply during flood periods. The combination of contaminated water, poor sanitation, and crowded conditions creates perfect conditions for disease outbreaks. Cholera, typhoid, and severe diarrheal diseases become common, particularly among children and elderly residents. The community health center, already overwhelmed during normal times, faces impossible demands during flood season when preventable diseases surge. Food security becomes a critical issue as local markets are disrupted by flooding. Vendors cannot transport goods into the area, and those who do manage to deliver food often charge premium prices due to the difficulties involved. Families that typically live day-to-day on small incomes find themselves unable to afford the inflated prices, leading to increased malnutrition, especially among children and pregnant women. The psychological impact of repeated flooding takes a significant toll on residents. The constant threat of losing everything to the next heavy rain creates anxiety and stress that affects entire families. Children develop fears around rainfall, and adults struggle with depression as they face the seeming impossibility of improving their circumstances, when natural disasters can instantly destroy months of progress. Community solidarity becomes both a survival mechanism and a source of hope during these difficult periods. Neighbors help each other evacuate belongings to higher ground, share food when possible, and provide shelter for those whose homes become completely uninhabitable. Religious and community leaders organize collective efforts to clean up after floods and support the most vulnerable families. Local organizations and youth groups work tirelessly to address immediate needs during flood emergencies. They organize volunteers to help elderly and disabled residents evacuate safely, coordinate distribution of clean water and basic supplies, and work to clear drainage channels when possible. However, their efforts, while admirable, cannot address the fundamental infrastructure problems that create these recurring crises. The long-term health impacts of living in flood-prone areas without adequate sanitation extend beyond immediate waterborne diseases. Skin conditions, respiratory problems, and chronic infections become common among residents who are repeatedly exposed to contaminated floodwaters. Children, whose immune systems are still developing, are particularly vulnerable to these health Challenges. Despite the overwhelming nature of these seasonal challenges, families continue to rebuild and restart their lives after each flood. Women like Salimata find ways to restart their small businesses, children return to school when possible, and communities work together to repair damage and prepare for the next rainy season. Their resilience in the face of such recurring disasters demonstrates remarkable human strength, even as it highlights the urgent need for comprehensive solutions to these urban challenges. Young Ibrahim Ouattara, 19 years old and full of dreams, represents the tragic reality of youth in these urban settlements where opportunities remain scarce and hope becomes a luxury few can afford. He completed secondary school against all odds, walking 2 hours each day to attend classes while working nights at a small auto repair shop to help support his family. Despite his educational achievement, Ibrahim now spends his days searching for employment in a city where formal jobs are nearly impossible to find for someone from his neighborhood. The youth unemployment crisis in these areas reaches staggering levels, with estimates suggesting over 80% of young people lack stable employment. Ibrahim's story reflects thousands of others who completed their education, but find themselves trapped in informal work that provides minimal income and no security. He joins daily gatherings at street corners where young men discuss their frustrations, share job rumors, and sometimes contemplate desperate measures to escape their circumstances. The absence of youth programs and recreational facilities leaves many young people with limited constructive outlets for their energy and ambitions. The small football field in Ibrahim's neighborhood, made from packed dirt with makeshift goalposts, serves hundreds of youth but represents one of the few positive gathering spaces available. During the day, children play football there, but at night, it sometimes becomes a meeting place for groups engaged in less positive activities. Drug use has begun appearing among desperate youth who see no future prospects. Tramadol, a painkiller that has become popular as a recreational drug, is readily available and cheap. Ibrahim has watched several of his childhood friends fall into addiction as they struggle with the depression and hopelessness that come from facing daily rejection in their job searches. The community lacks rehabilitation services, and families often cannot afford private treatment for addicted family members. Educational challenges extend beyond the basic schools. While Ibrahim managed to complete secondary education, the quality was poor due to overcrowded classrooms, insufficient materials, and teachers who were often absent. Technical training programs that could provide job skills are largely unavailable in these areas, forcing young people to learn trades informally or not at all. The few vocational training centers that exist have long waiting lists and require fees that many families cannot afford. Young women face additional challenges in these urban settlements. Mariam Tapsoba, 17 years old, dropped out of school when her family could no longer afford fees and needed her income from selling small items on the street. Early marriage becomes an option that families consider as a way to reduce economic pressure, but it often traps young women in cycles of poverty and limits their future opportunities. Teen pregnancy rates are high, partly due to limited access to reproductive health education and services. The digital divide further isolates youth in these areas from modern economic opportunities. While mobile phones are common, reliable internet access is expensive and limited. Young people cannot take advantage of online learning opportunities, digital job platforms, or the growing digital economy. Internet cafes exist, but charge rates that make regular use unaffordable for most youth from these neighborhoods. Transportation costs create another barrier for young job seekers. Many employment opportunities exist in other parts of the city, but the daily cost of transportation to interviews or work can represent a significant portion of potential earnings. Ibrahim often walks for hours to reach job interviews, arriving tired and dusty, which affects his presentation and chances of success. The informal economy absorbs many young people but offers limited growth prospects. Ibrahim occasionally finds work loading trucks at the central market, earning just enough to buy food for that day. The work is physically demanding, offers no protection from exploitation, and provides no pathway to better opportunities. Young people work in dangerous conditions without safety equipment, health insurance, or job security. Crime becomes an unfortunate reality for some youth who see no legitimate alternatives. While most young people in these areas are law-abiding, citizens struggling to find opportunities Desperation sometimes leads to involvement in petty crime or more serious criminal activities. The lack of police presence and community programs means that intervention often comes too late, after young people have already made choices that will affect their futures permanently. Mental health challenges among youth are widespread, but largely unrecognized and untreated. The constant stress of economic insecurity, combined with witnessing family struggles and facing daily rejection in job searches, creates depression and anxiety among many young people. Traditional communities may not recognize these issues as health problems requiring treatment, and modern mental health services are virtually non-existent in these areas. Despite these overwhelming challenges, many young people demonstrate remarkable resilience and creativity. Some organize informal groups to share job information, pool resources for small business ventures, or provide mutual support during difficult periods. Youth-led initiatives work to clean neighborhoods, organize sports tournaments, and create positive activities for younger children. The brain drain phenomenon affects even these poor communities, as the few young people who manage to acquire skills or education often leave for better opportunities elsewhere. This departure of talent perpetuates the cycle of underdevelopment in these areas, as communities lose their most educated and motivated young residents. Religious and traditional structures provide some support for youth, offering moral guidance and community connection. Mosques and churches organize programs for young people, although these often focus more on spiritual development than practical skills training. Traditional crafts and cultural practices offer some young people connection to their heritage, but these skills often do not translate to economic opportunities in modern urban environments. The contrast between urban youth in these settlements and those in wealthy neighborhoods is stark. While some young Burkinabe enjoy access to quality education, technology, and job opportunities, youth in these areas face systematic exclusion from pathways to advancement. This inequality creates tensions and reinforces cycles of poverty that are difficult to break without comprehensive intervention. Ibrahim continues his daily job search, maintaining hope despite repeated disappointments. He represents the potential that exists among urban youth in these challenging areas, intelligent, motivated, and willing to work hard, but lacking the opportunities and support systems necessary to realize their dreams. His story illustrates both the human cost of urban inequality and the untapped potential that could contribute to national development if given proper chances to flourish. The political upheaval that brought Captain Ibrahim Traoré to power through a military coup in September 2022 initially raised hopes among residents of these struggling urban areas. Mama Zainab, a 52-year-old community leader who has lived in the same Ouagadougou neighborhood for over 20 years, remembers the excitement people felt when the new leadership promised to address the needs of ordinary citizens. However, months into the new administration, the daily realities for families in these areas remain largely unchanged. The security situation that contributed to the political instability continues to affect urban areas in complex ways. While the terrorism threat primarily impacts rural regions, its economic effects reach deep into city neighborhoods. Displaced families fleeing violence in northern regions have swelled the populations of already overcrowded urban settlements, putting additional pressure on limited resources and services. Mama Zainab's neighborhood has absorbed dozens of families who arrived with nothing but the clothes on their backs, creating humanitarian challenges that local communities struggle to address. Military spending necessitated by the security crisis has consumed resources that might otherwise address urban infrastructure needs. The new government faces impossible choices between immediate security requirements and long-term development needs. Residents in these urban areas understand the security priorities but watch as roads remain unpaved, health centers lack medicine, and schools operate without basic supplies while military expenditures increase. Government promises of change have been met with skeptical hope in these communities. Previous administrations also made commitments to improve conditions for urban poor, but structural challenges and limited resources meant that few improvements materialized. Mama Zainab has heard similar promises from multiple political leaders over the years, and while she supports efforts to bring positive change, experience has taught her to judge governments by actions rather than words. the economic sanctions imposed by regional and international partners following the military takeover have had unintended consequences for ordinary citizens in these urban areas. Reduced development aid and suspended projects have eliminated some employment opportunities and delayed infrastructure improvements that were already planned. While sanctions aim to pressure political leaders, their impact falls heavily on people who had no role in political decisions but desperately need the services and opportunities that international cooperation could provide. Local governance structures in these neighborhoods remain weak despite political changes at the national level. Municipal services such as waste collection, street maintenance, and basic infrastructure continue to be inadequate or non-existent. The new national leadership has focused primarily on security and macro-political issues, while daily governance challenges in urban areas receive limited attention. Community leaders like Mama Zainab continue to organize residents to address immediate needs through voluntary efforts and mutual support. The relationship between traditional authorities and modern governance creates additional complexity in these urban settings. Many residents maintain strong connections to traditional leadership structures, but these systems are not well integrated with formal municipal governance. This dual system sometimes creates confusion about responsibilities and can delay responses to community problems. Effective urban management requires coordination between various levels and types of authority, but such coordination remains limited in most areas. Economic policies announced by the Traore administration include ambitious goals for job creation and industrial development, but the timeline for implementing these changes extends far beyond the immediate needs of families struggling with daily survival. While long-term economic transformation may eventually benefit these urban areas, residents need immediate interventions to address critical shortages in water, healthcare, education, and housing. The new government's emphasis on sovereignty and reducing foreign dependence resonates with many residents who feel neglected by previous policies oriented toward international partnerships. However, the practical implications of this approach for urban development remain unclear. Infrastructure improvements, healthcare system strengthening, and educational enhancements typically require significant resources and technical expertise that may come from international cooperation. Communication between the government and these urban communities remains limited. While political leaders make speeches and announcements through national media, information rarely reaches residents in these neighborhoods in ways that are relevant to their daily experiences. Many residents lack regular access to television or internet, and government communication strategies have not adapted to reach populations in marginalized urban areas effectively. Youth in these areas have shown particular interest in political developments, hoping that change at the national level might create new opportunities for their generation. However, the disconnect between political rhetoric and immediate economic realities has also generated frustration among young people who see continued unemployment, limited educational opportunities, and restricted access to basic services despite promises of transformation. Women's organizations in these communities have attempted to engage with new political structures to advocate for their specific needs, including maternal health care, women's economic empowerment, and protection from domestic violence. Mama Zainab leads one such group that has tried to present community concerns to municipal officials, but channels for meaningful civic participation remain limited, and women's voices often go unheard in political decision-making processes. International isolation resulting from the coup has reduced access to technical assistance and development programs that previously provided some support to these urban communities. Organizations that worked on water system improvements, healthcare delivery, and educational programs have suspended or reduced their activities, eliminating services that residents relied upon to supplement inadequate government provision. Religious leaders in these areas have become important voices in discussions about political change and community development. They often serve as intermediaries between residents and authorities, and their perspectives on governance and social responsibility influence community attitudes toward political developments. However, religious institutions also lack resources to address the scale of urban challenges, despite their spiritual and social significance to residents. The promise of participatory governance has been a theme in political discourse since the coup, but mechanisms for meaningful citizen participation in decision-making remain underdeveloped. Residents of these urban areas want opportunities to contribute to solutions for their communities, but formal channels for input are limited, and informal consultation processes are rare. This gap between democratic aspirations and practical governance continues under the new administration. Mama Zainab continues her community leadership work, organizing women's cooperatives, advocating for neighborhood improvements, and supporting vulnerable families. She maintains cautious optimism about political changes, while focusing on practical actions that can improve conditions for her community. Her approach reflects the wisdom gained from years of experience with political promises and the reality of grassroots organizing as the most reliable path to community improvement. The morning call to prayer echoes across the sprawling settlement as another day begins in what residents have come to call their forgotten corner of the nation. Abdoulaye Sawadogo, a 38-year-old imam who serves the community mosque, watches from his modest room as families begin their daily routines of survival. His small mosque, built from donations collected over 5 years, serves as both spiritual center and community meeting place, representing one of the few sources of hope and organization in an area that government services barely reach. The healthcare crisis in these urban areas has reached emergency levels, with the community health center reporting cases of preventable diseases that should not exist in a functioning healthcare system. Dr. Aissata Compaore, one of 2 medical professionals serving over 15,000 residents, works 16-hour days treating patients with conditions ranging from severe malnutrition in children to complications from childbirth in women who cannot afford hospital care. Her clinic lacks basic medical equipment, essential medications, and even reliable electricity to power the few medical devices available. Child mortality rates in these neighborhoods remain tragically high, with preventable diseases claiming young lives that could be saved with proper medical care and nutrition. The sight of mothers carrying sick children long distances to reach the understaffed health center has become routine, as has the heartbreak of families who lose children to illnesses that would be easily treatable in better-equipped facilities. These health statistics represent not just numbers but shattered families and communities, traumatized by preventable losses. The education system continues to fail the next generation, with classroom conditions that make effective learning nearly impossible. Teacher Musa Diallo manages a class of 95 students in a room designed for 40, using outdated textbooks and teaching methods that rely heavily on memorization due to lack of teaching materials. Many students attend class hungry, affecting their ability to concentrate and learn. The school building itself shows signs of structural problems, with a roof that leaks during rains and walls that provide little protection from the extreme heat. Environmental degradation in these areas has reached critical levels, with air and water pollution affecting the health of all residents. The absence of proper waste management means that garbage accumulates in empty lots and along drainage channels, creating breeding grounds for disease vectors and contributing to flood risks. During the rainy season, industrial pollution from nearby factories adds chemical contamination to air that residents breathe daily, contributing to respiratory problems that are epidemic in the community. The informal economy continues to absorb most working-age adults, but increasing competition and economic pressures have reduced incomes even further. Street vendors compete fiercely for customers who themselves have less money to spend, creating a downward spiral of economic activity. Mama Rasmata, who has sold vegetables at the same corner for 15 years, reports that her daily sales have dropped by half over recent years, making it impossible to support her family adequately. Housing conditions continue to deteriorate as overcrowding increases and families cannot afford maintenance or improvements. Multiple families often share single-room structures, with privacy becoming an unaffordable luxury. The lack of secure tenure means families hesitate to invest in improvements, knowing they could be evicted at any time. During the hot season, temperatures inside metal-roofed homes become unbearable, forcing residents to sleep outside despite security concerns. The psychological impact of living in these conditions affects every aspect of community life. Domestic violence rates are high, partly attributed to the stress and frustration that come from economic desperation and overcrowded living conditions. Mental health issues are widespread but go largely unrecognized and untreated, as traditional communities may not acknowledge psychological distress as a legitimate health concern requiring intervention. Women bear disproportionate burdens in these urban settlements, managing household responsibilities, caring for children and elderly family members, and often serving as primary income earners. They face particular risks related to their reproductive health, with many women giving birth without skilled medical assistance due to cost barriers and distance to proper medical facilities. Maternal mortality rates in these areas exceed national averages significantly. The digital divide isolates these communities from economic opportunities and information access that could improve their circumstances. While mobile phone ownership is common, smartphones and reliable internet access remain expensive luxuries that few can afford. This technological isolation means residents cannot access online job opportunities, educational resources, or government services that are increasingly delivered through digital platforms. Security concerns continue to affect daily life, with inadequate street lighting and limited police presence creating safety risks, particularly for women and children. Community-organized security groups provide some protection, but they lack proper training and resources to address serious crimes effectively. The combination of poverty, unemployment, and desperation contributes to crime rates that make residents feel unsafe in their own neighborhoods. Despite these overwhelming challenges, examples of resilience and innovation continue to emerge from these communities. Youth groups organize literacy classes for adults, women's cooperatives provide microfinance services, and neighborhood associations coordinate collective action to address immediate problems. These grassroots initiatives demonstrate the potential for community-driven development, even in the absence of adequate government support or external assistance. Religious institutions play crucial roles in providing social services and maintaining community cohesion. Beyond spiritual guidance, mosques and churches coordinate charity distribution, organize community cleanup efforts, and provide meeting spaces for various community groups. Religious leaders often serve as mediators in disputes and advocates for community needs with external authorities. The stories of individuals like Fatima, Musa,